What's up, guys? It's Teague from Battle City Games. I'm here with the updated Dark Magician deck profile. This is the first deck I ever brought you on the channel, and now it's back, it's updated, and it's ready for the July 2021 competitive format. As always, if you enjoy the content, make sure you hit that thumbs up button, and don't forget to subscribe because we have so much content coming up with the release of Dawn of Majesty. We've got Evil Twin updates, we've got Despia, we've got an update to Amazement, so much stuff coming up in the next month or so make sure you don't miss out on any of it. And make sure you let me know what you think of this updated build down in the comments below. Alright, let's dive on in. First up, you've got the ultimate wizard in terms of both attack and defense. There is no spellcaster monster in the game with more attack or defense than this guy. It's the Dark Magician. This is a Dark Magician deck, so it may seem obvious that we would be playing 3 copies of this guy, but I have seen some builds recently switch to 2. I don't really like that because if you find yourself in a situation where you need a Dark Magician still in your deck, but maybe you hard drew it, it's just not ideal, so I like to make sure I have 3 copies available just for maximum effectiveness. And, of course, we've got my personal favorite artwork. Moving on from there, we are on triple copies of Apprentice Illusion Magician. This card is just such an easy and free body to put on board. All it takes is a discard to special summon, and then you get to add a Dark Magician from your deck to your hand, so it self-replaces the card that you discarded. And it's just, like I said, super easy to put on board to make sure you have bodies to link summon with. And then that ability to discard it or send it from the field to the graveyard to boost up one of your Dark Spellcasters by 2,000 attack should not be overlooked because you can OTK out of nowhere with a copy of this card or use it to defend something that maybe your opponent thought they would be able to attack over. From there, moving on, we're at the best normal summon in the deck, which is triple copies of Magician's Rod. This card just gets you any of your spell or traps that specifically list Dark Magician in their card text. So it can grab you stuff like your Soul Servant, your Dark Magical Circle, anything that you might happen to need at any given moment. This is one of the ideal cards you want to see in your opening hand as often as possible. I really wish there was a more specific way to search this, but maybe we'll get that down the line in some future support. From there, we do have triple copies of Magician Souls. Listen, guys, I know the price tag on this card is outrageous. Hopefully, we see a reprint coming up. We do have the Mega Tins. Maybe they'll sneak it in there. Or we do have the Battles of Legends set coming up a little bit later this year, I believe around October. Either one of those would be a great opportunity to see this card reprinted. So if you don't have your copy and you can't pick it up right now, don't lose hope. I'm sure you'll probably be able to see it in the next couple months in some sort of reprint. But if you do have access to this card, it's just absolutely amazing for the deck. It's everything the deck needed in terms of monster support. It gets a Dark Magician out super easy while also putting a body on board for itself if you need an effect monster. And then that ability to send spells and traps to draw cards really synergizes with some of your cards and helps you cycle through maybe some dead cards like double copies of Dark Magical Circle or Eternal Soul. So absolutely, if you have the copies, definitely want to play the Magician Souls. Moving on from there, we've got Jester Confit. If you don't have Magician Souls, go ahead and max out on this guy because he is just an entirely free special summon, no restrictions or conditions on him, so he does help you put that spellcaster body on board. And keep in mind, both this guy and Souls are level 1 monsters, which you will see come up in our extra deck. And then moving into some one-ofs, we've got the one Keeper of Dragon Magic. Still on this guy for right now. I have gone back and forth on cutting him from the deck entirely, though. Right now I've chosen to keep him in because he is a Dragon Effect monster, which does make him a valid fusion target for your Red Eyes Dark Dragoon, as well as the fact that he is the only true normal summon outside of Magician's Rod that you're playing. So he can be useful to help search some of your fusion spells like Red Eyes Fusion or Magicalized Fusion. So for now, we still have the one copy. From there, she's somewhat of a brick, but you can't play a Dark Magician deck without playing his compatriot that you see on the mat, which is the Dark Magician Girl. We really don't want to draw her. Ideally, we're dumping her to the graveyard with Magician Souls so that we can get the additional draw off of our copies of Soul Servant. But Love the artwork, so I am happy to get to include a copy of her in the deck. And then for the last non-hand trap in the deck, you got to play the one Red Eyes Black Dragon. Just allows you to utilize Red Eyes Fusion to bring your Dark Dragoon out, ideally on turn 1. And being at 1, hopefully you don't draw them too much. Moving into the hand traps, we are doing triple copies of Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, followed by triple copies of Ghost Bell and Haunted Mansion. I think these are some of the best generic hand traps for the current format. You can main deck both these and know that they will hit almost every single deck you're likely to play against. Now, I know Ash Blossom is kind of expensive right now. I think even the lowest rarity copies will run you anywhere from $15 to $20 a piece. So if you don't have access to them right now, feel free to substitute her with maybe something like a Droll and Lockbird or a DD Crow. It's a cheaper hand trap, but if you have Ash Blossom, I would definitely recommend playing her in the main deck. Moving on into the spells from there. First up, we do have triple copies of Soul Servant. Magician's Soul is everything this deck needed in a monster, and Soul Servant is everything it needed in a spell card. This is a quick play spell that lets us put any card from our deck that lists Dark Magician in its text to the top of our deck, so we can even get monsters like Magician's Rod to the top. And then we can also banish it from our graveyard in order to draw cards equal to the number of differently named Dark Magician and Dark Magician Girls, and I believe Palladium monsters in our graveyard. You may have noticed we're not playing any of the Palladium monsters, so the maximum we're going to be drawing is 2. But having triple copies of Pot of Greed in your deck is pretty good. I hear that is the reason that card got banned eventually. So absolutely, if you got them, play the Soul Servants. Gotta love this card. From there, of course, you're going to want to play triple copies of Dark Magical Circle. Still got to get my 3rd secret rare, but this jumped up in price recently for the original Dark Illusion printings, so we're still working on that 3rd copy. But nonetheless, this is an amazing card. It lets you look at the top 3 of your deck for any card that specifically lists Dark Magician and add it to your hand. And then once per turn you summon a Dark Magician, you get to banish a card on the field. So pairing this with something like Eternal Soul to disrupt your opponent during their turn is great. One of my favorite plays, honestly, is to activate Soul Servant, stack something to the top that I need, maybe like Magician's Rod, and then follow that up immediately with Dark Magical Circle to get the card that I need. And then since Dark Magical Circle lets you put the other 2 cards, or lets you put all 3 cards back in any order you want, you can then use Soul Servant to draw whatever card or cards you also revealed off Dark Magical Circle. Moving on from there into some one-ofs, we have the 1 Secrets of Dark Magic, the 1 Magicalized Fusion, the 1 Red Eyes Fusion, and I know it's not too popular, but I am still on the 1 Eye of Timaeus. I'll go through each of these real quick. Secret of Dark Magic is just a searchable fusion card since it does list Dark Magician in its text. And the fact that it is a quick play means that you can utilize it in the battle phase for some potential OTKs. Magicalized Fusion is the Miracle Fusion for spellcasters, letting you banish from your graveyard in order to fusion summon. So what I like to do is, I'll use the Red Eyes Fusion to bring out 1 Dragoon on 1 turn, and then during the next turn, if you have your Magicalized Fusion, you can use that to banish the Dark Magician and the Red Eyes from your graveyard in order to go into a 2nd copy of Dragoon. Of course, 1 Red Eyes Fusion. In the previous build, I did have this at 2, but it could be a little bit cluggy sometimes, and you didn't always have the ability to fuse twice from your deck. So I went ahead and cut it down to 1 to make the additional room for some hand traps. And then for the Eye of Timaeus, a lot of people don't like this because it's not searchable, even though it lists Dark Magician. It's a long story. But I like it because it is a 1-card Dragoon or any of the other fusion cards in your extra deck. So I like to keep a 1 copy because it doesn't really hurt. You have such easy access to getting Dark Magician on board or Dark Magician Girl that I like having access to a 1 copy of Eye of Timaeus as well. And then moving on into the traps, of course, we're going to play triple copies of Eternal Soul. This is another one I've gone back and forth on potentially cutting it down to 2 copies. But ideally, I always want to end my first turn with a Dragoon on board, a Dark Magical Circle on board, and an Eternal Soul set. And having 3 copies of Eternal Soul is just going to maximize my chances of making that happen. So for now, we're still on to 3 copies. And then we are playing triple copies of Infinite Impermanence. This is just another hand trap for the deck. Previously, these were Solemn Strikes, but you're not always going to go first, and I want to make sure I have as much disruption for my opponent's turn as possible. And Imperm, right behind Ash Blossom and Ghost Bell, in my opinion, is one of the best hand traps you can play this format. So, triple copies there. And then for the last trap in the main deck, I do still have a 1 copy of Magician's Navigation. You can use this for the effect to summon from hand and deck if you really have to. Maybe if you hard draw it without a way to get it to the graveyard. But ideally, you just want to discard this off of Magician's Souls, go ahead and get it to the graveyard, and then draw the additional card. And that way, during your opponent's turn, you can banish it from the graveyard in order to negate a spell or trap. But that's going to do it for the main deck, guys. Let's go ahead and get on into the extra deck here. Still got the double copies of Red Eyes Dark Dragoon. Again, I know this card is pricey. Let's be honest, Dark Magician is not the cheapest deck right now. These themed decks tend to have a higher price tag because 1, people love nostalgia, and 2, several of the cards do usually tend to be competitive outside of the intended archetype, which will drive those prices up. But Double Dragoon, you want to be able to go into 1 on your first turn, and you want to make sure you have a copy available for following turns, whether it's your second turn, or maybe you get into a simplified game state and are able to bring one out a little bit later on utilizing your Magicalized Fusion. Or your Eye of Timaeus, because remember, this does list Dark Magician, which makes it a valid target. We then have 1 copy of the Dark Magicians. This is super easy to summon out since it just takes 2 Spellcaster monsters. Honestly, I don't find myself bringing it out all that often, but it is useful enough to warrant the 1 copy in the extra deck. Since that quick effect to allow you to draw a card and then set it and potentially activate it the same turn if it's a quick play spell or trap, it's just too good to pass up, and getting the additional draws can help you build some advantage back up in the later turns. From there, for my last 2 fusion cards, I've got 1 Dark Magician Girl of a Dragon Knight and 1 Dark Paladin. Dark Magician Girl of a Dragon Knight is just a viable target to summon, actually off of Magicalized Fusion or your Eye of Timaeus, and she actually has a pretty useful quick effect, which just lets you discard a card to target a monster on the field and destroy it, so she can actually be a useful disruption during your opponent's turn. And then Dark Paladin, honestly, it's just one of my favorite cards of all time. I remember when this card first came out back in Magician's Force, I saw the artwork, and I wanted this card more than anything because I was such a huge Dark Magician fan. So finally being able to use this in a meaningful way that is easy to get it out in a Dark Magician deck just makes me so happy that I've got to include a copy. And the ability to act as a magic jammer during when your opponent activates a spell card is pretty awesome. Some decks, if you put this out, they just can't play through it because it's not once per turn either. So you can negate as many times as you have cards in hand to discard. And if you happen to find yourself playing against that Dragon Link player, you will have quite a large Dark Paladin to go alongside it. Then moving on into some of the links, we have the 1 copy of Relinquished Anima and the 1 Imduck the World Chalice Dragon as our link 1 options. Relinquished Anima, it's a spellcaster, so it's in theme, but you can use your Magician's Souls or your Jester Confit to go into this, and if your opponent had some bad zone placement, you can potentially steal a threat off board for fairly cheap. And then for Imduck for World Chalice Dragon, this is in here because you can turn your Dark Magician into it since it just requires a normal monster. And then if you have your Magicalized Fusion, you can use that to fuse Imduck as well as your Dark Magician, since Imduck is a Dragon Effect monster. It's just another way to get to your Dragoons. We really want to make sure we have access to Dragoons in as many ways as possible. And then for our only link 2 in the deck, we have the Verte Anaconda. I don't know if this is going to be the card that gets banned or if it's going to be Dragoon eventually. I hope it's Verte Anaconda because I'd hate to see Dark Magician lose such a powerful card for the archetype just because it's so easy to make thanks to Verte Anaconda. But while we've got it, we're going to use it. It just takes 2 effect monsters, which is why we play so many different ones that are easy to get on board between Apprentice Illusion Magician, Magician's Souls, Jester Confit. We've got so many options to get effect monsters on board. It's usually every first turn you can get into Verte Anaconda. And then for our Link 3, it's a spellcaster deck, so we are playing Selene, the Queen of Master Magicians. If it comes up that you are able to get into a Link 3, she'll just bring back any of your spellcasters and get you into your Link 4, which of course is Access Code Talker. If you have everything else for this deck and you maybe don't have the Access Code Talker, don't sweat it. You could substitute this out with something like Borreload or Boral Sword Dragon. Those are both great OTK enablers. And I believe they only require 3 monsters, so you would just need that 1 additional monster on board, since Celine will give you something guaranteed. And then for our Exceeds package, for our rank 7s, we have the 1 Ebon Illusion Magician, as well as the 1 Red Eyes Flare Metal Dragon. Ebon Illusion Magician is just a great option, since it can special summon out a Dark Magician directly from your deck, and whenever a normal monster declares an attack, Ebon Illusion Magician will actually let you banish a card on the field, so it serves as some great removal as well. And then Red Eyes Flare Metal Dragon actually is useful because you can use its ability to summon your Red Eyes Black Dragon back from your graveyard. So putting a Flare Metal Dragon on board can actually equal up to 5,200 damage on its own. And don't forget, your opponent's going to be burned for 500 every single time they activate a card or effect. So late game, if you put this guy on board, it can be very devastating and just potentially win you the game outright. And then for the last 3 Exceeds monsters we play, we've got 1 Lyrilusc Assembled Nightingale, the 1 Downerd Magician, and the 1 Divine Arsenal AA Zeus Sky Thunder. As I mentioned in the main deck, both Souls as well as Jester Confit are level 1s, so you can easily special summon both out in the same turn, go into your Assembled Nightingale, attack directly since that's not an activated effect, and then in main phase 2, you can go into Downerd Magician followed by Zeus in order to give yourself 2 disruptions with Zeus. This is ideal for going second, maybe if your opponent set up multiple negations. You're not really going to be able to play through that with many of your other cards, but going into Zeus can just wipe your opponent's board completely and then allow you to set back up for your following turn with some more traditional plays, maybe get your Dragoons out. So that's going to do it for the updated deck profile, guys. Dark Magician is one of my all-time favorite archetypes, so I love building with this deck and crafting and trying to figure out the best way to play it. I love to make this deck as competitive as possible, but if you guys would like to see a little bit more fun, maybe a budget build that doesn't include some of the cards like Souls, make sure you let me know that down in the comments below, and I will definitely be working on that for you. As always, if you enjoyed the video, make sure you give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on future content. Until next time, I'm T with Battle City Games. It's time to duel.